And hi again. This week's episode of the No Holds Barred Education Show, where all things education can be covered in real terms. So, no holds barred, no one protected. It's all about bringing the information to you. And this week's episode, episode number 2, will cover the changes to the exams situation for next summer 2021 and communication, how to make it easier in the English language exam. Paper 1, I think we'll cover this week. You see, a lot of people find that quite difficult, but all we need to do is follow a few steps and find that everything will fall into place. I'm including the micro lesson on this show so that you can play it again to your child or your friends' children, or if you've got any friends, share this with them and they can follow along too. It's all about teaching the kids how to communicate. So first, let me share a screen with you. Where are we? Right, so the exam years situation for the current situation, let's make it clear that it's like that, because we're still quite a way away from next summer. So this may well change. And while we don't know what COVID is doing, I would say it's highly likely that it will change. It's still a little bit shaky. Let me give you an example. There's a delay of 3 weeks to the exams. So instead of them starting around mid-May, they'll start in June next year and finish in July, which people as old as me will remember. That was the old situation when we used to finish exams in July. I'm not convinced by the delay of 3 weeks, to be honest, because it doesn't actually make up for the amount of time that some students missed. And that in itself says to me that there is a possibility that it will change again. There's a discussion that Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary, has put forward, and that is that he thinks it would be fairer for the kids to actually take the exam. To a large extent, I agree, because that is how they really get to show their mettle. And it would take away the possibility of the confusion that happened this summer. However, what has to be considered is the content on the specifications, because the examinable content is still to be decided. So that's a lot of exams which will be affected at GCSE and A level, or high school in general. And the examinable content of each will be adjusted. Now, I don't know when this will be happening, or what will be considered to decide what will be examined and what won't be examined, because with the time constraints that we have a situation in which, where time is passing, how do we know we're not spending time covering content that won't actually be in the exams instead of focusing on what will be in the exams? Because with the timescales that this is being cut down to, we can't do the right thing and cover everything. It kind of makes a mockery, if anything, of the exam system. Because it's saying that not everything is necessary. We know that anyway, but the things that are necessary, like soft skills, life skills, are not being examined anyway. It's quite a complicated position to be in, but I intend to bring you some more clarity as we get it. And if you would like to drop me your email, I'm happy to add you to our mailing list, in which case you will get a newsletter and with all the updates as they come into play. Right. Putting the actual dates of the exams and what is to be examined aside for a minute, the results are to be issued in the same week in August 2021. So it won't be GCSEs one week and A-levels on another week. It will be all in 1 week. Not sure how that's going to play out. Again, it's one to watch and one that I will give you updates on as I get it. So remember, as always, you are entitled to online learning if your child is off school for any situation whatsoever, be that a bubble, be that a bubble breaking down or your child's illness. You're entitled to online learning, but what is sent is up to the school. Remember, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can email me or get in contact with me on jgeducate.com, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Right, so one more thing about the actual exams in 2021 that I'd like to cover, which I haven't covered before, is particularly for A-levels. And this is my interpretation as of yesterday. A lot of A-level students are applying for university. We know this. University exams are, and the university's assessment process is separate to that of GCSE and A-level. I'm hoping that there will be some sort of adjustment to the process to account for the unexaminable content that is taken out of the A-level spec. Because this, if subjects are not accounted for, are not examined, and not taught, is this going to disadvantage A-level students during their first year of university? Because the first year of university has certain assumptions as to what the students should know from what they shouldn't know. So the knock-on effect for university students is that they may not know what they should know, and this might well affect their university experience. So again, leave it with me. I will see what I can make of this, but it's all very unclear at the moment. This is just an update so that you know when you know. Okay. Right, now, micro lesson of the week. This is one that the government would do well, frankly, with listening to this week, because it's a lesson about being clear, about making clear points. It's one that comes up quite regularly in our English language sessions. Students struggle to make a point clear. They struggle to develop a point. And this is often the case with students who like to speak in slang. Slang is fine, it's fun, but in general, at this time, it's best to try and speak in the Queen's English, because that's what you have to get into the habit of, to speak well and write well. If you speak well, you write well. As it stands, we tend to write as we speak. So if your child speaks in a lot of street slang, then they're likely to try and write that way, and will find it quite difficult when put under pressure to do any differently. So we've got to be very careful. I always say, be driven by what you read. Perhaps a daily newspaper, and I can see you recoiling in horror at anything media driven at the moment. by all means, be recoil. My caveat is The Guardian is good for the grammar, not the subject matter. So if you read The Guardian, and when I say read, in this case, I'm not saying reading for meaning necessarily. I'm saying reading to look at how they use the punctuation in their writing and how this actually adds to the meaning which is being passed over. But if you're going to give your child a Guardian to read, be sure to discuss it with them afterwards, because discussion is great for adding clarity. So it might be the case that you decide to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes a day and discuss topics with your child. It can improve outcomes for English language, and especially when working on important higher skills such as analysis. Now, analysis is one that kids find hard because it means looking at the consequences of what you're saying. So, in actual fact, it means adding one last sentence, this will mean that. I don't know why I've got this strike off today. This will mean that, or this will lead to. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. First of all, I must emphasize, for want of a better word, the importance of reading daily. We really need to drive home the use of punctuation and the use of reading to be able to speak well, to be able to write well. It's key if we're going to hit those higher grades. Excuse me. Every single one of our students, every one of our English students has to read and analyze in every session to ensure that they're getting into the habit of doing it, and they're getting into a habit which will help them to speak in a clearer form. You know, that form when they're asking for something, when they do it very clearly indeed. Right, step 1. And this is the steps I'm taking you through is useful for the AQA English Language Paper 1 question 2. So I'm taking this from AQA English Language Paper 1 question 2. There are steps available for each exam board. I'll tell you what to do at the end if you want to look at a different exam board and want some steps to use. But in general, when analysing a quote, this is what we do. We have to establish which language technique the writer is using. And this is from an excerpt from a book. I've given you here some sentence starters. Typically, students tend to struggle to start to write because they're not sure how to start the sentence. Once they start the sentence, they are okay. So the writer uses, followed by the language technique. Or similarly, we could use the writer includes, or in the first paragraph, the writer uses. That's even better because what the student is doing is pointing the examiner exactly to the place that they are talking about. In the second paragraph, it's very similar. At the end, the writer uses. In each of these, the student is making it very clear what they are referring to. So, what are they referring to? They're going to be referring to one of the following language techniques: adjectives to describe. That's great because they're not only pointing out that it's an adjective they're talking about, just showing that they understand an adjective by saying to describe. There's verbs, there's imagery, similes, metaphors, alliteration, personification. This sheet alone, I would love you to be able to give it to your child to make sure that they understand each of these language techniques in its entirety. So not just to say, for example, a simile means something that is like something else, but to understand the actual intricacies of the use of similes. Because if they're saying, as we said, the writer uses a simile, the whole context will then start falling down if they say to say something is like something else. What would be good is if they're able to say what a simile does in its entirety. Right, and then add a quote. I have said this so many times to students lately, it's unbelievable. Support what you're saying. If you don't support what you're saying, then it makes your whole argument fall apart. You have to back it up. Now, this seems to be a difficult one for many students because they don't read properly. They know how to read, but it's largely decoding. So they know what the words say, but they don't bother in reading the detail. And when that falls apart, this adding of evidence, adding a quote falls apart because they have to be careful that the quote that they use actually supports what they're saying. I'll say it again. The quote that they use must support what they are saying. So therefore, they need to realize that they need to read in detail. So my advice at the start of question 2 is always to read the excerpt and then read it again and to annotate it so you can remember exactly what you're thinking about what you're writing. I know this sounds like a lot for one statement, but it's more important than you think because it actually runs through many of the answers that your child will have to give. And lastly, as I said, the effect on the reader. What is the consequence of what you have written? So if we take the simile approach, as we have been doing, the writer uses similes because we've added a quote to back that up. What does this make the reader imagine? What does it make the reader think? What does it tell the reader? I've had a student this week that I said to him, imagine you're reading a book. You're thinking about what the thing that you've read makes you feel like doing or feel like thinking or feel like acting. What does it do to you? And he said, I don't really feel anything really. I said, well, you need to start reading properly. The consequence is in the effect on the reader. So I will backtrack again because this is a micro session. Which technique is used? From this list of techniques, which every student of the English language exam should know, plus the intricacies of them. Add in a quote which supports what you are saying, and look at the consequences, the effect on the reader. Together, these should give a solid 4 marks. For question 2, they're going to have to do it twice to get 8 marks. But no one can turn down 8 marks. These are skills that are needed for the exam. It adds clarity to what they're saying. They should remember that these are examiners that don't know you. So then no one's giving the benefit of the doubt. What it is for you to communicate your answers and communicate them in a way that anyone will know exactly the point that you're trying to make. Right, so any questions you have, I'll answer them live on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. Or you can submit them on either of these links, All Things Education, on my profile. You can DM me questions on Facebook Messenger, or if you want to join our mailing list, you can go to All Things Education, book a call, which is free, no obligation. We can sort out your question and any details you'd like to give, put you on our mailing list, and you can get these updates on a regular basis every week. As a gift to you for listening to this point, I will provide learning mats similar to the one that I've gone through today, covering all the different skills that are needed for education in English language. So the English language exam, I've got learning mats for all of the skills that are needed. I'll happily send you a link to download them so that you can pass them on to who needs them. All I'll need is your email address. Get in contact and I'll be happy to share these with you. Let me get back to... So, to go over, it's been a bit of an unclear message for you today, and I apologise for that. I've been watching this carefully, and I'm hoping that at some point the government will make itself clear on these points. It's important because there is no time to waste on exam preparation this year. It's not fair on the kids, it's not fair on the families, it's not fair on applications for future education, it's not fair. If you'd like to get in contact with me, I'm happy to let you have the details that we've put out today. And in the meantime, I look forward to any questions that you have, and I will answer them next week. On that note, I will see you then. Have a good week.